Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I'm bringing you guys my Week 7 battle for UBC Season number 6. Pretty sure. I always forget what damn season it is. Anyway, we're going up against youngster Bill, coach of the Dallas Drampas. Bill is a recent addition to the UBC. He took over for Cap, and he had been the coach of the Toronto Swab Blue Jays. And we actually made a trade with him back in week 4, at the end of week 4. We gave him my Tapu Bulu, and he gave me Pangoro, Cloyster, and Scizor. So he really helped us to reshape our team, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So was sad to see Cap go, but glad that youngster Bill is here in the UBC. Let's go through his team real quick, and then we'll go straight into the replay. So he has Mega Diancie, Zapdos, Tapu Bulu, Latias, Marowak Alola, Dugtrio, Miltank, Bisharp, Toxapex, and Girder. So there's definitely a lot of scary mons on this team there. I think the number one threat, honestly, is Zapdos. Like, Zapdos is extremely annoying, especially with the team that I've decided to bring. If I had brought, like, Nihilego or Jolteon or maybe even Whimsicott to some extent, I think Zapdos would have been a little bit easier to deal with. But the particular team that I have is definitely annoying. Diancie is scary, but I think I'm pretty well prepared for that, thankfully. And then, yeah, like, the other annoying mon is Toxapex, of course. Toxapex does a decent job of checking many of the members of my team, like Scizor, Entei. It switches in fairly well to Nihilego. Whimsicott can't really touch it, and stuff like that. It can also tank hits from Cloyster very, very easily. Swellow, I guess, can't really do that great versus it. It depends on the Swellow set. Maybe it can two-shot. Like, if it's a special set and the Toxapex is Fizz Def to deal with Scizor, maybe I can two-shot it with Boom Burst. But otherwise, it's just very annoying. But the nice thing about Toxapex is that it does sort of bait in two of my better potential sweepers, being Zygarde and Reuniclus. And so that's sort of what I built my team around. We have a sub-Zygarde here with Sludge Wave and a, a Lonely Nature. Sub-DD is just really nice. With a +1 boost, we outspeed the majority of his team, unless he's got like a Scarf Lottie or a Scarf Dougie or something like that. 1,000 Arrows hits his whole team except for Tapu Bulu, which is blown back by Sludge Wave. So that's the reason for this particular moveset. And if we are behind a sub, we can pretty easily 2-hit KO a Tapu Bulu and not really have to worry too much about it. Even if he's got like a Kebia Berry, it should be nice. We put enough speed on here for max speed Bulu. We put enough HP on this so that if Miltank has a Seismic Toss, we can survive the move with our substitute up. So that's the reasoning for that. And then the rest just went into attack with a Adamant Nature. So nothing super crazy here, just sort of a nice setup Zygarde. To bait it in, we have an Akaberry Scizor. And this is sort of like my quasi check to Tapu Bulu, just because it does quad resist the grass move, so that's nice. It's also a good response to Diancie. So Bullet Punch, U-Turn, Superpower, Roost. We put only enough speed on here to outspeed Marowak. I don't actually have a great move to hit Marowak, but we can't just U-turn out of there and go into something. I'm not really sure. Marowak kind of blows back my team, if I'm being honest. I mean, there's certain mons that punish Marowak, but Scizor is not one of them. So if he gets Scizor in versus Marowak, that's pretty bad for me. Superpower for Miltank, and then Roost just for longevity if I need it, like for taking better hits from Bulu and stuff like that. But yeah, just enough speed for Marowak. We put a decent chunk of attack in here and the rest into HP. So, and Akaberry is just to deal with like HP Fire Lottie in particular, but also to hit to survive a HP Fire from Diancie on the predicted switch in. My next mon is Colbur Berry Reuniclus, and this is nice with Trick Room for just kind of blowing through his team. Like, if he can't break my Colbur Berry before Bisharp gets in, this has a good chance of just getting like 4 straight kills, depending upon how whittled his team is. Because Psychic hits everything that's not named Lottie or Bisharp, and we obviously have Shadow Ball for Lottie and Focus Blast for Bisharp. So, standard looking spread here. We went with a Regenerator instead of Magic Guard because we are not Life Orb. And so We don't really need to have the Magic Guard to protect ourselves from Life Orb recoil. It's obviously would be nice to not have to take entry hazard damage when we come in, but Regenerator sort of helps us heal that back anyway. And this allows me to use Reuniclus a little bit more in the defensive role, like it can pivot into a Latias if it needs, or a Toxapex or whatever. So I felt like that gave me more utility this week. So again, I think both of the Reuniclus and the Zygarde are good for bringing in on Toxapex, and hopefully we can get some momentum going that way. To support this, we do have a sort of Spadef-looking Steelix with Stealth Rock, Heavy Slam, Earthquake, Toxic. Heavy Slam plus Earthquake is just nice versus the majority of his team, except for probably not Toxapex. What's it called? Zapdos, which is why we have the Toxic. Getting a Toxic on that thing is really important, just because I don't have a ton of ways to threaten it offensively, which is really annoying. So for the spread, we put enough speed in here to outspeed Toxapex, enough attack so that we two-shot a Fizdef Toxapex. If he brings Toxapex, that's what I'm expecting in order to deal best with Scizor, and maybe to take 1,000 arrows and things like that if it needs. And then the rest into Spadef. And this makes me a really nice switch into Diancie, Lottie, and a whole bunch of other things. So next we do have a Flame Orb Swellow. I noticed that this is really nice versus his team. It breaks through a lot. The only thing that can kind of threaten it is Sucker Punch Bisharp. And he might not bring Bisharp. We'll have to see. Like, he doesn't have much for Reuniclus if he doesn't bring it, so maybe he has to. But otherwise, like, that thing, Sucker Punch, is the only thing that really scares me. And with this coverage, like, we almost one-shot the entire team. The only thing we don't one-shot is Bisharp, and I probably, like, a max HP Marowak as well can live Brave Bird. But Steel Wing allows us to hit Diancie for 4 times super effective damage, which is great. And we have just enough speed on this thing to outspeed Dugtrio, so that's looking spicy. And so with the last slot, I was feeling extremely weak to Zapdos still. I've been complaining about Zapdos like all team builder. But basically, I don't have any Rock Stab, I don't have any Ice Stab on my team up to this point. And I think those are the only 2 types that hit Zapdos super effectively. I think that's it. Yeah, so I don't have any of those. So I don't have a way to hit Zapdos very hard. So that's why I decided to go with a Cloyster on my last slot. And this also gave me backup checks to things like Calm Mind Lottie. I can go for Icicle Sphere versus Dugtrio. It can outspeed and hit Bulu with Icicle Spear and do a ton of damage. This coverage here lets me hit his whole team, which is really nice. I mean, Rock Blast doesn't really hit Toxapex all that hard, but it can hit if it needs. And then Spikes is just there sort of as a filler move. I don't really need it. I could have gone with Explosion, but I didn't really think I needed it. Or I guess Ice Shard, but if I'm already Scarf, excuse me, Choice Scarf with Ice Shard doesn't really make much sense. So with the spread, we just outspeed Adamant Bulu with this. So if he's like a Choice Scarf Adamant Bulu, we can outspeed. So that's looking pretty nice. So yeah, that's the team. Definitely a pretty spooky matchup here. Let's see how it goes. We can hop on into the team builder. And he has brought Bisharp, Girder, Zapdos, Diancie, Latias, and Dugtrio. So I was kind of expecting like 100% a Kebiberry Tapu Bulu to come, and we don't see any Tapu Bulu, so that's a big surprise to me. So it makes me wonder what his resist to 1,000 arrows is going to be. And the only thing on his team that really looks like it can take it is a physically defensive Girder. So that kind of makes sense to me. In terms of dealing with Scizor, it's got to be a Fizdef Zapdos. Like, that definitely makes sense. I guess it doesn't have to be Fizdef necessarily. It could just be like a Fast Zapdos. Fast Zapdos is very hard for me to deal with because it can outspeed Zygarde and other stuff. If he somehow gets rid of my Cloyster's Icicle, or not Icicle, his Choice Scarf, then my Icicle Spear can no longer outspeed and take him out. But yeah, it's definitely a bulky or Zapdos of some sort. Almost certainly has HP Fire on Diancie and on Lottie for dealing with Scizor. Dugtrio, I'm a little intrigued by a Dugtrio, just because like it traps Jolteon. I guess it also traps Nihilego, which is nice for him. Against my particular squad, I think I'm pretty safe versus Dugtrio, so that makes me feel good. I don't think it's going to be an incredibly useful member for him. It can maybe trap Steelix, but I bet that Steelix can tank a non-choice banded Earthquake if it needs. So, in terms of lead matchups, it's kind of a tricky one here. I don't think I have a particularly good lead. Maybe the lazy lead is to lead with Scizor and just go for U-turn. But the problem is that if he's got Heat Wave on Zapdos and then HP Fire on either his Diancie or his Lottie, that it's not a very good lead. And it doesn't lead that great versus anything else like Bisharp, because Bisharp can outspeed and go for knockoff. Girder doesn't really care. So going for Scizor just for the lazy U-turn option is not really nice here. I decide to lead with Swellow because I figure if he wants to lead maybe Diancie, just because Diancie maybe is a lead he could do. I guess in Gen 7 here, because it gets the automatic speed boost, it's not that important to get the immediate Mega, and so Diancie doesn't even need to run Protect necessarily. But it might still be nice to get up the Mega Evolution immediately, so that way it can dodge the it can get up Magic Bounce, and then I don't have to worry about rocks and stuff. So that is an option for for him, I'm thinking. But otherwise, I can just sort of see what he wants to do, go for Protect with my Swellow, and then make a judgment call based on that. So with that said, let's just get this started, as he does lead with his Zapdos. So this is not a very good situation for me, just because nothing can really switch into Zapdos. I have to sort of predict his coverage moves. And so he does go for the Heat Wave on turn 1 here. He was expecting probably my Scizor, not my Scizor, my Steelix switch in. But, it's nice to be able to scout. But now I'm expecting him to want to go for the electric move in case I want to, maybe go into or just maybe stay in and go for an attacking move versus him. I'm expecting the electric move to come out, and so I'm going to pivot into Zygarde, and then there's almost no way that this thing doesn't have HP Ice. So on the following turn, I'm going to go into my Cloyster and take the HP Ice pretty easily, as you are about to see. And he doesn't know my set. I can now follow up with an Icicle Sphere, and even if he sacks this to, even if he tries to kill me with the, I'm having such a hard time here with the Discharge. I'm very happy to trade my Cloyster for Zapdos essentially, just because Zapdos is such a hard Pokemon for me to deal with. So the next time it comes in, it's gonna be pressured to Roost. If I can somehow get up rocks before it comes back in, I can guaranteed have it dead. So it just seems worth it. And Cloyster isn't that amazing versus the rest of his team. It kind of brought it just to put damage on Zapdos. It could be useful for dealing with Lottie, but I have Scizor, I have Steelix, I have Swellow, all for Lottie, so it definitely is a-okay with me. So in this situation, now I can just go into Swellow and collect a kill with Facade, more or less. And so he's going to go into Diancie. It takes almost 40, which is crazy. I'm not even sure that Mega Evolved Diancie could live a second Facade, but it doesn't really matter. I do have the Steel Wing to hit this thing up. If Facade would have killed, that would have been the better play, because then I wouldn't have to risk the chance to miss. So now he goes into Lottie, and the way he brings this in, it makes me think that it's Choice Scarf. And Choice Scarf Lottie does make sense, because it allows him to outspeed a +1 Zygarde. And that's pretty much the only thing on his team that can do that, besides Dugtrio. But Dugtrio doesn't particularly threaten Zygarde. So that, again, doesn't really strike me as his Choice Scarfer. So I'm thinking it's Lottie. I don't want my Swellow to go down here. And so I am just going to go into my Steelix. And as you can see, he actually is a Life Orb set. And so this was a little surprising to me, just because, again, I was kind of explaining to myself, oh, this is probably a Choice Scarf Lottie, but it's not. And that is scary, because now this thing could potentially have a coverage move to hit Steelix. If he wants to go for Surf, I do actually live it with my investment. And so that's why I'm just going to stay in here and click Rocks here. If he wants to go into Zapdos, that kind of stinks, because then he could Roost. But I can throw off a Toxic if that's what he wants to do. So he does make the play into Zapdos, and I am going to be able to get up my Rocks. This will be really nice for just getting a little bit of chip versus his team, weakening Lottie, taking away Life Orb hits. And if the Zapdos ever wants to pivot in again, that's very useful. So he does go for Roost as I go for the Toxic. And at this point, again, I don't really have anything that can switch in on this and then immediately threaten it, because Zapdos is a broken Mon. So I'm just going to stay in here and basically just try and get him as whittled as possible. And I go for the Heavy Slam versus him. He goes for a Hidden Power Ice, expecting my Zygarde to potentially switch in. Like, I just am going to be spamming Earthquake till I die at this point because I don't want him to roost, period. And so the toxic damage here is going to bring him down to about 20%. And so that means he can no longer switch in on rocks. I decided just to go into Swellow and collect a kill because I guess I could have gone into Zygarde and gotten the revenge kill there. And then if I gone into Zygarde, he would go into Lottie, and I would have to figure out how to play around Lottie. At least with this, I'm probably going to force in something like Bisharp or Girder, and I feel like I can potentially deal with those better. We'll have to see. But my Swellow is looking pretty nice here as he does bring in his Bisharp. I go for Protect to see if he wants to go for Sucker Punch. Maybe we can get into some mind games here. He does just go for Knockoff. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, what is he going to do? Is he going to, like, Pursuit? What is he going to do? Is he going to click Knockoff again? You know, it's all these dumb mind games with Sucker Punch. It's all the 50-50s. I decide just to go for damage on the Bisharp. Hoping he doesn't click Sucker Punch. You know, he didn't go for it immediately, so maybe he doesn't have it. So I am able to get off a nice 51% with Facade, which is looking pretty great. And he does take out my Swellow, of course, with the knockoff. But now I've got this thing quite in range. It's very much whittled. I could go into a whole lot of things to deal with it. So here it's the question of, do I want to go into Scizor or do I want to go into Zygarde? I could go into Zygarde and just click 1,000 Arrows, but like he's got a pretty free switch into Girder, I would say, if he wants to make that play. I think at least with Scizor, I can, you know, pretty much get a guaranteed kill on the Bisharp. If he wants to pivot out into something else, I get an opportunity to go into like Reuniclus if he goes into Girder or he goes into Dugtrio. If he goes into Lottie, I'm pretty sure I kill the Lottie. And if he wants to stay in with Bisharp, I can then knock off the Bisharp. And then at that point, Reuniclus is looking really, really good. Amazingly good. Just one Trick Room like kills this whole team. So that's really nice. So yeah, basically I feel like Scizor is a better play, because then I can sort of react to what he's doing. And he does decide to preserve the Bisharp, which makes sense. It makes it so that I can't just win with Reuniclus, you know, straight away. But he does go into Girder, which gives me a nice opportunity to go into Reuniclus all the same. So I am going to go for Trick Room on this turn. And he is going to go for Sucker Punch. And this actually really stinks because my Colbur Berry was supposed to be for Bisharp. And that was going to help me stay alive versus that thing. But now I cannot live a Sucker Punch from Bisharp. So I'm in a little bit of a tricky spot. I don't want to let my Reuniclus go down here. And I don't know what his moveset is. I don't know if he's got Pursuit or not. But you know, if he's got Pursuit, then good on him. I think I just die to that. But I think my overall like safest play is to go into Scizor, because I can take the knockoff if he wants to go for that, and I can potentially like roost up on his predicted Sucker Punch, which would be nice, and then I can go for a U-turn and threaten it. And even if he goes for knockoff, he might be in range of Bullet Punch after that. Like he'd be at 18%. And I can quickly calc on the side here to see if it would be in range. Let's see, Bisharp. Yeah, so one Life Orb hit puts him in range of Bullet Punch, assuming that he's a no HP Bisharp. So, like, that's a fine play in my book as well. It's just going into the Scizor and trying to click Bullet Punch. So I do decide to do that, and he actually doubles into his Lottie. So this was definitely interesting. I'm not sure, like, maybe he was just scouting for Focus Blast, which makes sense in a way, but if he just had just gone for Sucker Punch, then maybe I would have been in trouble anyway. But, you know, he hasn't shown Sucker Punch up to this point, so who knows. So I am just going to go for the U-turn because it's extremely free. I can then go into my Reuniclus as he brings in the Girder. And so, at this point, the Bisharp, it's at 28%. It comes in at 22% after rocks, which means that Shadow Ball is a guaranteed kill. And I don't think there's any way he's leaving Girder in here. And even if he is, like, I don't think this thing can threaten me all that much. So, I'd rather go for Shadow Ball and anticipate the Lottie switch in. and then try and make a move from there. And that's exactly what happens here. I do go for the Shadow Ball, and I do 54% to it. So not enough to kill it, but enough that I can kill it, on a future turn. I go into my Scizor as he goes for the Roost, and he is Life Orb. I can easily live a Life Orb, Hidden Power Fire, and take this thing out with the U-turn. So that's looking pretty good. So I do that, but now I kind of have a decision to make here. Do I want to go into Reuniclus, which just baits in the Bisharp, or do I go into Zygarde, which baits in the Girder? I decide to go Zygarde just because, like, if I go Reuniclus, he goes Bisharp. I basically have to let Reuniclus go down just because, I can't do anything to Bisharp, and I die to Knock Off or Sucker Punch or whatever. And at least this way, like, if I go into Zygarde, I'm not, like, sacking him on for basically nothing. That's kind of the thought process here. So he does go Girder. If I can just weaken Girder a little bit, I can potentially put it in range of, like, Superpower from Scizor. Or I can get my Reuniclus in and, go for a Trick Room or go for a Psychic or whatever. And then if he brings in the Bisharp comes in at 22%, takes a Life Orb hit, and then it's in range of a Bullet Punch. So that's what I'm thinking there. That's totally fine with me. So I'm just going to go for 1,000 Arrows, try and weaken this Girder, just because I feel like as long as I can get damage on it, I have a path to victory. And Youngster Bill makes a fair play. Like, he goes into Bisharp, I guess hoping that I'll go into Reuniclus. Like, it makes a lot of sense for Reuniclus to be brought in on Girder. It kind of would be a choke in this situation, just because, like I said, I think if I just go for damage on Girder, I have a path to victory between Reuniclus and Scizor. But if I go into Reuniclus as he brings in this Bisharp, then I'm kind of screwed. So it's a very good play on his part. Like, I think it was kind of the only play he could make. But luckily, it means that he gets knocked out by my 1,000 Arrows. And then his Girder is going to come in, and it's 3 versus 1. It's going to be very difficult for this Girder to polish me off. And he is going to show the Ice Punch, but luckily I've got a little bit of HP investment, which allows me to live, and I can even survive the follow-up Mach Punch and take him out with the final 1,000 Arrows, resulting in a 3-0 victory for the Baltimore Oriolus. So after a very rough start to the season, we've rattled off 2 straight wins, which has me feeling, I wouldn't say good, but it has me feeling better about this season. There's a lot of great battlers in UBC, and so, I don't mean to, say, oh, well, I just lost because my team was bad, or anything like that. Like, every person who beat me, like, really deserved it. But that said, I'm feeling really happy with the changes that we made, and I think we're going to be able to finish off this season very strong. And we've got a couple of tough opponents coming up. I think next week we go up against Redikai, who is a new addition. I forget who we play the week after that. I think it's Scoot. And then we close out with Vepsis. And Vepsis, I am very excited to play because he and I squared off in the semifinals of UBC last season. And he got the better of me. He brought just a really great, solid team versus me. There wasn't anything I could do versus it. So that was a big bummer. But, if I can try and get a couple of, sneaky kills versus him this season, I'll be pretty happy. And maybe I can even catch a W. So, hope you guys are looking forward to that. Make sure you check back to the channel for all sorts of other gaming and Pokemon content. And until the next time, I'll see you guys later.